every builder and product person's dream to build something that becomes way bigger than like the team and you, and it's just like a thing that exists in the world. I still remember those really early moments of like drawing up the plans and diagrams and how things would work. To fast forward that, to see this just become a thing that people just, yeah, of course you buy and sell on Marketplace is very satisfying.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and in this episode, I'm joined by Bowen Pan, who has recently returned to New Zealand. Following an impressive career in Silicon Valley, including establishing Facebook Marketplace, which has grown to reach over 1 billion users and attract more people each month than other US platforms such as Amazon and eBay. We delve into Bowen's inspiring journey through his education and founding an early pre-Facebook social network in New Zealand, joining TradeMe and learning valuable lessons before making the jump to Stanford University and Silicon Valley, and ultimately having impressive success in multiple areas at Facebook, Stripe, and Common Room. Along the way, Bowen shares lessons on failure, pivots, and the importance of nurturing ambition. As he discusses returning to New Zealand and our burgeoning tech scene, we gain fresh perspectives into how global experience can fuel innovation. Whether you're fascinated by product management, the evolution of local tech startups, or the impact of bold moves in tech, this chat is packed with stories and advice to spark your own ambitions. A big thank you to our show partners, Workday, 1NZ, Spark, 2 Degrees, and Gorilla Technology. Now, let's jump in. Bowen Pan, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here in the studio.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Now, first up, would like to start during your school years and really looking back at those. Do you see some of your entrepreneurial and tech leanings coming through at that time?
So when I was during my schooling years before uni, I'd say that my focus was like pretty simple, which was like I was a good Asian kid who wanted to study hard and get really good grades, and then figure out what to do later after that. Yeah. So I was already pretty interested in software and in computers. So the entrepreneurial things I did back then was like pitching to the school that they should take down what I thought was a really badly designed website and allow me to remake it for them, and kind of help with different school production, like marketing and all that kind of stuff. Like I had a lot of personal interest in that, and I did some freelancing design on the side as well. So that was nurtured, I think, during the school years, and that was actually nurtured initially because my my mom was doing a master's degree in information systems. And during a school holiday, she saw me playing too much computer games, and she's like, "Oh, maybe I can try to like hook them up with things that are a bit more useful on like how to design websites." And so she gave me a module as part of like her like master's work on like HTML design and CSS and JavaScript and stuff. And I just took it, and I actually I ended up finishing the module myself. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Like you can actually make stuff. Like yeah. And so that's how I really picked up my initial interest in tech.
Yeah.
And then when I got to uni, it was really being introduced to this group called Velocity, which you may have heard of from University of Auckland.
Yeah.
It was called Spark back then, but they had to change the name because of the telco. But that was a really, really amazing like group of folks who I think that was the first time I was exposed to essentially uncapped ambition.
Yeah.
Where there were just these people who are students who used to study at University of Auckland who then went on to found companies. You know, like I remember Fatty was like a few years before me, who then founded Power by Proxy. Priv Bradu, who was the inaugural CEO of Velocity, who then went on to Harvard Business School and ended up founding Blue Oak, which is one of the early pioneers of like e-waste recycling. And so seeing these people gave me just completely opened up my world of saying, wow, like there's all this possibility out there that you didn't have to just get good grades and then go and work at a graduate role at like a bank, which is, you know, I'm not dinging that. That's fine. That's totally a legitimate career. But that's not the only choice.
Yeah.
There's a lot more choices in the world that's possible. and found a lot of really great mentors. Like, so you may have heard names like Jeff Witcher. He's a mentor to a lot of young folks, including myself, and even to this day, we're still very close.
Yeah, that's great. And so, what was your first real entrepreneurial endeavor? Was that something that you did while you were studying, or was that post study?
Yeah, so I founded my first startup at the end of my first year at university, and it was a venture called UniFriend. As the name suggests, it's a social networking site for university students.
What year was this?
That was in 2005.
Wow.
It was very
Okay.
very early. We didn't know what Facebook was. I think Facebook may have been founded or very early in a few Ivy League universities. And the idea of, I think at the time there was this whole wave of kind of niche social networks where you focus on particular networks. So like our one was like, oh, cool, like you just get a university email address to validate, and then that will form these university-specific networks. And so that gained some level of traction, and I decided to essentially take a 1-year leave from school, where I reduced my workload to, I think, only like 1 or 2 papers for the whole year. And because I don't think at the time University of Auckland has an official policy of allowing to pause your degree, but I was able to essentially promise university. My final year, I did a conjoint degree. So in my final year, I actually did double the course load in the end to finish it within the same. But I took 1 year leave to see, like, okay, let me really give this a crack. And at the end of my first year, when I founded UniFriend, we ended up being runners-up for Velocity, and that kind of opened up a whole different set of opportunities around mentors, and that was when I was first introduced to the Ice House. And I remember Andy Hamilton was the CEO then.
Yeah.
It's very early days of the entrepreneurial ecosystem here. Yeah, so that was really fun. But thanks to Facebook, I had to go back and graduate, because obviously didn't reach a level of success after Facebook entered New Zealand. But we learned a lot of really, really great stuff there.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. So after you graduated, what did you decide to do?
So I graduated in 2008, which is not the best time to graduate. And I think, so in the end, the only interesting role I could take was the offer that I got from my internship, which was at Deloitte, and so I did just over a year there, and it was actually pretty interesting, because it gave me a view of what corporations are like, what government entities are like, and how change happens, and so spent a year there. And then after that, decided to fulfill my dreams of working at a tech company. And in New Zealand, the dream then, there was only one company, and that was TradeMe. There was no other scale company at the time.
Yeah, Xero was really just in its earliest phases, wasn't it?
Yeah, when I joined TradeMe, Xero wasn't even public. And then later, I think, right before I left TradeMe, they went public, but it was really to raise venture funding at like 50 million market cap or something.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was like a random accounting software, kind of random. Yeah, cloud was like very early back then, and I spent just over 2 years at TradeMe, where I really, really enjoyed my time there. It was post-acquisition. Fairfax had given TradeMe a lot of leeway to just do its thing, and it was one where we had a pretty small team, like 150 people, which by New Zealand standards like not small, but you can stay pretty nimble.
Yeah.
And my job was very broad. My job was to basically be the kind of like shared product and strategy resource across all of TradeMe, and so and helped with data analysis, so that we would look at how do we drive more like real estate agents to upgrade their property listings one day, to how do we have more folks sign up to the dating site and make sure that they get matches and they get replies. It's just so broad.
Wow.
And that was really, really interesting. So I think that gave me a really good grounding in an intuition in marketplaces, in how consumer products work. And it had just enough scale, even though New Zealand was small, but just enough scale. And TradeMe had over 80% of domestic traffic in New Zealand at the time. And enough kind of it wasn't a public company, so I had a lot of freedom to try things and do stuff, and also help them to launch a few new businesses as well. So back then it was the deals, the daily deals
Daily
craze.
deals, yeah.
Yeah, so we launched one for TradeMe as well that eventually got spun off. And yeah, so I really enjoyed my time there. And I left a few months after they refloated on the stock exchange.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Any other big lessons that you walked away with?
I think I really enjoyed like how much latitude and autonomy that was given to like a relatively inexperienced, like essentially 1 year out of school, to go in and to propose some really bold ideas and big things to try. I think, and also like tolerance for failure. I remember I worked on this massive pricing change for TradeMe. That was a really big deal back then. And I had spent like a month or two modeling every possibility out with all the different elasticity of like where the pricing might be with these changes. And we rolled it out, and it was a huge failure.
Oh, wow.
It was a massive failure. Like it did not work at all, because even though the math said it would work, what ended up happening, basically it was about how do we change the price of gallery listings. So gallery listings is basically like being able to show the photo on the listing itself. That's like a really valuable thing. But what we found is like, like the value of a gallery listing is different depending on what you're selling. Like if you sell a really expensive piece of furniture, like that's way more than like a piece of clothing. So why don't we like make the price different? Why don't we make it so it's cheaper for some stuff and more expensive on other things? Like that like rationally makes sense.
Yeah.
But the problem was like pricing something like this is that you introduce complexity, and when you have multiple tiers, even though you drop the prices on some things, but some things have increased, when people look at complexity and they look at something have increased, they just assume everything is worse.
Yeah.
And that's just like the general, like immediate general backlash. Like the numbers never recovered, and we had to like roll the entire thing back. But my point isn't just the pricing learnings, but also the fact that was, I mean, I was mortified, obviously, like as a new grad, but that did not hurt my career at all. In fact, everyone's just like, well, we learned some stuff. Let's keep going. All right, let's make sure we don't make the same mistake again. But there was no kind of stopping or slowing down of the intensity of which we moved.
And then you moved on. Was it Law Spot that you were involved in co-founding?
Oh yeah, that was a fun one. Yeah. So Law Spot was when I met my girlfriend and now wife at the time, and we were obviously in Wellington with TradeMe. And she was working as a lawyer at Russell Mack, and I remember her just like complaining about like kind of volunteering at like community law centers. And she's like, it's just like so inefficient. Like it's during work hours, and actually like a lot of the folks who like need the legal advice, like it's like really expensive for them to take time off work to try to get legal advice. So it's very counterintuitive. And then it's also hard for the volunteers because you have to physically go to the law centers, and it's like, and I was like, sounds like a tech solution. and so we partnered. She was the CEO, which is a wise choice, and then I helped on the tech side, and we basically built out a tech platform that essentially was under the legal umbrella of the community law center, so that gives you legal immunity.
Yeah. Okay.
But all the questions and answers would be in an online bank, essentially. So it'd be a bank of questions and answers. And now every time you ask a question, it will search for like what's already there, and it will just have like a library of anonymized answers. And now volunteers can do it anywhere.
Great.
Yeah, they can like just do it at the office.
Yeah.
And that was set up pretty quickly. So that was done in about 6 to 8 weeks.
Wow.
I think like from scratch, built the whole thing and launched it, and then my wife ran it for like another year before she left for the US.
Yeah. Okay. And then what happened from there?
Yeah. So after I finished up at TradeMe, I looked around and really felt like unlike now, there really wasn't much in the tech scene for New Zealand, right? Like this is like, as we just talked about before, like very early zero, pre-Rocket Lab, and otherwise like not that many software business. I think like Orion Health and like Datacom, like it was those kind of companies, but no real kind of global venture scale businesses, and no venture capital industry either. And so it's always been a dream of mine to work in Silicon Valley. I used to always like read TechCrunch even back then on what's happening, and I really wanted to give it a crack because of all the examples that were set before me by all the folks that I met at Oakland Uni. And so I decided to say, well, like, what's the easiest way to go? So my first path is I applied to various roles. And obviously they're like, who is this random Kiwi? Like, I've never heard of Trade Me. Like, and so that didn't work. And the second path was, well, maybe I could like try to go through via school. Like that would give me a visa, and that's what I did. So I was very fortunate through mentors like Jeff, who introduced me to other people and other people at the school who talked with me. And so in the end, ended up at Stanford doing the MBA program. And that was my way to land in Silicon Valley. And graduating there then give you like an additional 18-month, essentially like a grace period to work while you apply for the work visa in the US. And then so I ended up at Facebook.
So how did that come about in terms of getting into Facebook? How hard was it to get those sort of graduate types of roles and so on?
So it's easy once you are in the in club. It's very hard when you are not in. And so the way that I got into Facebook actually was not directly via Facebook. It was actually first initially via the internship program, where I was interning at Dropbox. And once I interned at Dropbox, there's a very clear pecking order in Silicon Valley of the brands of how hot a company is and the type of talent that those companies tend to attract. People don't like talk about it publicly, but there's a very clear like tiers of like where you're at. And Dropbox was very hot then. The level of hype is like up there with OpenAI now. Like that was kind of the hype back then. And so because of the fact that I interned at Dropbox, I just got so much inbound. Like I just got all these like approaches on LinkedIn. And one of them was Facebook. And I had no interest in working for Facebook at the time, but I really wanted to see their campus. So I decided to check out their campus, but was really pulled in by the people that I met and the level of ambition and the talent was just something different and just really different from everyone else that I had like met before. And so eventually decided to join Facebook.
And so, walk us through your journey at Facebook because, I think there's probably a fair bit packed in there. And tell us about how you pitched the idea for Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah. So my time at Facebook is divided up into roughly like 3 episodes. So there's the first 4 years. So I was there for 6.5 years. The first 4 years was Marketplace, so we can talk about that. And then the second episode was a relatively more unknown, but actually a pretty interesting piece, which is short form videos. So that's a whole story about TikTok, and launching the first version of Facebook short form video experience that eventually got rolled up into Reels, Facebook and Instagram Reels. And then the last part of my experience there was building out the live gaming experience, building out live streaming, and like a Twitch competitor where people watch other people play games. Sounds strange for folks who are not in the space, but it is a very popular kind of entertainment category.
Yes,
but so that's how I spent my 6.5 years. The first 4 years, Marketplace was the most formative, and it was just a really special time at Facebook. I would say it was a time when the level of reach that the company has, but to the number of employees it had, was unprecedented. I think for every one engineer at the time, there were something like 2 million users or something.
Wow.
Like the ratio was crazy. And they were growing so fast that I remember that when I signed my contract with them to when I started, which is about a semester, they had doubled in size.
What?
Like in that
That's-
time,
that's-
it was just nuts.
crazy.
Like it was just growing like crazy. So that was the first part. Is Facebook was like in a really interesting time, and I would say one of like the real golden times of the company, where you could move at blazing fast speed, but at massive global scale. And I think every era you get one of these companies or a few of these companies. I think OpenAI is one of these companies now. Facebook was a company of its time, and then before them, maybe like Microsoft. Like I think there's just different companies in the spotlight. And so under that kind of environment, there was a lot of appetite for folks to experiment and try things. And one of the mantras at the company was that code wins arguments. That was literally like a poster that was put everywhere.
Code wins arguments.
Code wins arguments, as in if you can ship it and the users use it, then you win. It's better than anyone arguing, better than any exec trying to figure out whether someone would use it because people actually use it.
You've
right?
got the proof.
Yeah, you got the proof. Yeah, so code wins. And later that became data wins arguments, but same thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that was kind of the precondition for, again, a relatively new MBA grad going into Facebook as a pretty junior product manager, and so when I went in, during the company's induction period of about 8 weeks, we call that boot camp, where you learn about the company system and process and how data systems work, et cetera. I had a very strong personal interest in commerce, social networking sites, probably because of UniFriend and TradeMe, and just through me trying to find every nook and crevice of where could there be a spark of something, because like surely there's something when there's 1 billion people on a platform, and that's when I came across a piece, like a little nugget of research that suggested that 1/3 of people in Indonesia, which is where these researchers went for that particular report, was treated Facebook as their primary e-commerce site.
So this was an internal Facebook report?
This is a research report. Yeah. So Facebook do these research reports all the time. It was fun. The report was for something completely unrelated, but this is one of the random surprising things that they filed away in the appendix. And that kind of sparked just a curiosity of where could that be happening? Like that seems pretty anomalous. And so decided to just use my time during onboarding to really do some research, and very quickly honed in on Facebook groups. And Facebook groups was the only place where people could buy and sell stuff that was not like your friends. And so did that, ran a few queries, realized that, oh my God, there were tens of millions of people, but fragmented across hundreds of thousands of groups that people were just organically creating. But there's definitely a way to think about how do you aggregate all this together and really create a centralized marketplace. And so that was a start. One of the ways to accelerate this was to really leverage these internal hackathons at Facebook, where you basically for 2 or 3 days you don't have to work on any of your day jobs. You can do anything you want, and then you can ship it to staging. Staging just means it's not public, but it's enough where it's real enough on the Facebook site. We can showcase it, demo it, and then we decided to leverage this hackathon to recruit other people, and also as a way to try to get it in front of more execs to show, not tell. And so we built the prototype, and then we ended up being one of the folks to be able to present this to Zuck, because Zuck would at the time reveal the top 10 demos.
Right. So there'd always be hackathons going on, but only sort of a pinnacle of those would get in front of.
Yeah, because it's too many. There'd be hundreds and hundreds, right?
Okay.
And Zuck saw it's oh yeah, it's pretty cool. When we're shipping it.
Wow.
Yeah, we're we don't have a team. And so we pulled forward some headcount from next year. And it was very small teams, 3 or 4 people. And that formed the core engineering team. And I was the first product person to then form that, to then build out the first version, which was essentially detecting whether you're buying and selling something in a group, and then turning that group into a for sale group. And that was a building block of a marketplace, which then later on, about I think it was about just over a year later, then led the launch of the marketplace tab itself, and we launched it to all English-speaking countries to about 350 million like monthly active users, and then scaled it later to other verticals like cars and rentals. And when I left marketplace, it was at about 850 million monthly actives, and then I think now it's got about a billion monthly actives, which is so surreal. It's still surreal. It's surreal even for me, like because those numbers are, even for Facebook, they are big numbers, and never in my wildest dreams would I imagine that I would see headlines today where they say, oh, like Gen Zs are using Facebook because of marketplace. I'm like, what? Yeah, that's really cool. I think it's every kind of every builder and product person's dream to build something that becomes way bigger than like the team and you, and it's just like a thing that exists in the world. And yeah, you can say, and the satisfaction of feeling like I still remember those really early moments of like drawing up the plans and diagrams and how things would work, to like to fast forward that to see this just become a thing that people just, of course you buy and sell on marketplace if like for certain stuff. Is very satisfying.
Yeah. And what do you think sort of caught that initial attention of Mark Zuckerberg at that, that point where you demoed it? What do you think you got right that was enough to attract his attention when there were, I guess hundreds of these, things being built? And
I think the pitch is the thing that often works at Facebook, and I think this is generally true for a lot of consumer-facing companies, is that these are what the users are telling us, and it's an undeniable kind of set of user demand that's pulling us into that direction. And you can actually apply this to B2B as well if you feel this undeniable pull of the market. And I think the equivalent of that pull of the market for marketplace was the fact that when you added up everyone who was buying and selling in these groups, there were more people than Craigslist. And Craigslist was the equivalent of essentially like it's a classified site, right? It's like, and I think Craigslist had more than 80 million monthly actives at the time. And so when you added up these groups, it was bigger. And then once we started launching the buy and sell features in groups, we could quantify every time someone market sold, so you can get an approximation of a GMV, your gross merchandise value. And that was really big. Like it was actually like sizable and comparable to like even eBay. And that was undeniable, right? And then we showed a very clear path to how that could be built as a destination and not just locked away in these groups. And so Zuck actually did something pretty rare, which is essentially he came over and came to us and said, like, I'm like convinced that this is something that people want to do. We can build something that's really world class in this, and I'm going to reserve a spot for you in the app, and you don't have to worry about how that spot comes to be. I will instruct the right teams to clear the space for you. That's your space, but I want you to ship within like X amount of time to make it happen. You go and make it happen.
And how difficult was that period of going from, convincing him that there's an opportunity to actually, building it, figuring out the data and working out what it should ultimately look like, and all the other challenges, because you've just come in as a new member of the team, and now you're involved in something that's ultimately ends up being really key to Facebook's success.
I think it's definitely wasn't easy for sure, and it's we would go into these multiple what we call lockdowns, different from a COVID lockdown. This is pre-COVID, which basically means that you don't leave the room until you solve the problem. Everyone literally moved their desk and computer into a garage-looking room inside like the Facebook office, and you stay there until the problem is solved.
How long are you talking?
6, 10, 12 weeks. You don't sleep there, but pretty much every other waking hour you're there.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we did all that, and then But there were also lots of other things of like, we had a small team, and I think it was like the fourth pivot or something. We didn't have, I think we were like running out of time in terms of the deadline that was set, and we had to move fast, and we couldn't afford building the experience out on iOS and Android natively. This just takes too long, requires too many people. And so we threw a Hail Mary and we said, let's try this experimental technology called React Native. And React Native team at Facebook at the time they were in like the crevices of like Facebook settings and stuff. It was like very small.
Yeah.
And so we talked to the team and we're like, hey, this is your time to shine. Do you want to be exposed to 350 million people? And so I think overnight they doubled their team.
Wow.
And we worked hand in hand with them. And so React Native was basically plucked out of obscurity. And Facebook Marketplace became the first true scaled React Native product. And that's how we built like the initial launch version of Marketplace in 10 weeks. And it was largely because of React Native.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you didn't just do Marketplace while you were there either. So maybe just a quick touch on, what you did with the rest of your time.
Yeah, so really quickly, after Marketplace, a few of our early Marketplace folks kind of essentially went around Facebook to say, oh, what other cool stuff can we do? And we noticed that there is this app from Asia that was spending millions and millions of dollars every day on Facebook. To the point where when their spend particularly spiked in certain areas, like you could see Facebook engagement impacted.
Wow.
And so like it's really clear what was happening. They were siphoning off Facebook traffic, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, as I alluded to earlier, hindsight's 2020. That app is TikTok, and TikTok was initially built on the back of YouTube and Facebook ads. And so we looked at how this app was behaving, and what became very clear was that this app worked in very different ways from Facebook, where it was what's called unconnected content. So it's content that is from people you don't know. And that's a very novel concept for Facebook at the time. And it's also it's difficult for Facebook to comprehend and to evaluate this app as well, because the retention curves of a unconnected media app looks more like cable television than it does a social network. So the retention curves and all the acquisition economics, they're just different. And so it was easy for Facebook to write that off and say, oh yeah, it's going to be a fad. Look at the retention curves, they look very different. But we kind of looked at that and realized, oh, like this is actually a public space where people are essentially just performing to each other. And the point is that you don't know them.
Yeah.
Because if you knew them, that will probably be a social inhibitor.
Yeah.
And that's fundamentally challenging to the Facebook model. And there are ways to solve for this, because you can create a space on Facebook to do this, and probably not Facebook, probably Instagram, because like the population was better then. And so anyway, we had a series of long back and forth discussions and ended up initially launching this as an experiment separate app. So that was Facebook's first foray into short form videos. And we built out Facebook's first short form video creator program. I think it was a group of like 50, 60 creators that I actually, when TikTok acquired Musical.ly to enter the US, I had heard that there were a lot of folks who are not happy on the US side. And so I flew down to LA like the next week, and I hired the first short form creator person who used to work for Musical.ly. She helped me to like put together a team of creators. I used to like live stream with these creators like once a month to give them product updates and for them to ask me questions. So this is like a really new muscle for Facebook.
Wow.
And then also like we built out a whole panel of like raters of saying how entertaining is this piece of content, because it was a cold start problem, because there was no data to feed to see what was good and what was bad.
Yeah.
And so these were very useful learnings for Facebook to then take all this to get rolled up to launch Reels, which is essentially Facebook's official scaled response to TikTok.
Yeah.
And those products are a reasonable defense where TikTok is no longer an existential threat to the company. So did that for about a year. And that entails a whole different set of things. Like I had to testify to the FTC later about all kinds of funny things, which we can go in another time.
That might be another episode.
That's another episode, yeah. Which FTC or the FCC? But we just lost, actually, so I can more publicly talk about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then the last 1.5 years, a lot of our marketplace folks then went into gaming. And that's when we built out the live streaming experience. So we took a lot of the experience we learned from short-form videos, and we built out a live gaming community. And we grew that to be the third largest streaming platform in the world. And so Microsoft had a platform called Mixer back then.
That's right.
And they shut it down.
Yeah.
Because of Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they migrated all their users over to us. And that's still a pretty thriving community today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So much packed in. We could probably go a lot deeper there, but keen to hear a little bit more about what else you did before you came back to New Zealand. You had a period as head of product at Stripe, and also after that you were at Common Room. So maybe you can tell us a little bit.
So after Facebook, I went to Stripe, which is a fintech company that does payments, and I went there because I wanted to really see and test myself on how much of the skills I learned at Facebook is actually like real product leadership and not just me getting good at like how to do Facebook stuff. And it's like as different as you can get because it's a fintech company and I was working in developer experiences. So I built two different products there. One is I built the Stripe apps, which was essentially a B2B app store where Stripe had aspirations to become the central nervous system for small to medium businesses. And so they already had payments and transaction information. And then they built this app store so all the other financial apps and the ways to operate your company can plug into Stripe directly so you can run your business on top of Stripe. So this includes Xero and everything else as a central operating system. And that was like a really great experience. And so we built that from scratch, I think from start to finish, 8 months. And we launched with 50 partners who built their own apps. And now there's like 400, 500-ish apps, which is a pretty important part of Stripe's strategy. And then the second piece that my team is responsible for is building out Stripe Dashboard, which is the UI layer, essentially. Like if you don't use Stripe for APIs, then Dashboard's the only way for you to interact with Stripe.
To see what's going on.
That's right, yeah, to see what's going on.
Yep.
And that's also really critical for Stripe's SaaS ambitions. So Stripe has this huge ambition to build out a big SaaS business because Stripe is one of those businesses where the bigger the customer gets, the worse of a customer they become because you get margin compression on payments, right? So they really wanted to expand into SaaS businesses, and that became a pretty core like UI layer for that to happen. So we completely refreshed the dashboard and built the foundation for SaaS businesses to become a thing. So I did just under 2 years here, and it was fun, but also it was a good grounding in like payments. But I also felt like 2 years in payments was good for me.
That was enough.
Yeah, it was good. And then I really wanted to build out and experience B2B SaaS. Like that was the one piece of the puzzle that I just did not have like really solid experience in. And so that's where I went to Common Room. And Common Room is a B2B SaaS platform for sales and marketing, specifically helping you to build pipeline for sales teams and account-based marketing for marketing teams. And there was a really fun time. Like it's I can't say like good enough things about the folks at Common Room. If I was in the US, I would have been there for a very long time. And but the time I was there was quite a pivotal time for the company because when I joined the company, that wasn't what Common Room was doing. Common Room was a community management platform.
Wow.
For social media managers and community managers.
Yeah.
But I had like the core pieces of technology that was very useful for go-to-market. So I went in and I worked with founders to essentially execute a complete pivot of the company and essentially gave out the company had about $1 million ARR US in community management, which we basically completely gave up.
So you destroyed your existing revenue. Yeah,
we didn't completely destroy it per se, but we basically like had to pivot the entire company away from it. Now it's a very small proportion of the total revenue, and built that out to be essentially like an AI the poster child for AI go-to-market startups. And now Common Room serves about 60% plus of Cloud 100 companies, and a lot of the AI companies you might know as well. So companies like Atlassian, Notion, Zapier, Anthropic, their sales team all use Common Room to build their pipeline, which was really fun because that gave me also a grounding in building out go-to-market.
That's great.
And then after that, my wife and I had always planned to come back to New Zealand. We actually decided that we probably want to seriously think about New Zealand with the birth of our first kid in 2020. And we started really looking. And so we initially did that by getting involved with a few of the early VC funds that were just starting in 2020 in New Zealand. And over that time, we just really started getting increasing conviction that the startup ecosystem is real in New Zealand now. And there's a real thing, a really amazing, fantastic thing happening here that's really, really encouraging. And there are also some companies that are, I think, the best you'll find anywhere in the world with a level of ambition that matches any company in Silicon Valley. I think we need more of them, but the fact that there are a few that meets that bar is really, really amazing. And we've had so much fun, and what a great place it is to raise our kids. But not only that, it really did not feel like a trade-off for us at all. In that, we're not only are we doing interesting work here, but we're also hopefully helping companies to be successful to then plug back into the local community that we love.
Mm. And in terms of those that are listening in, sort of pondering working in New Zealand versus maybe other parts of the world, which is a topic that seems to be coming up a little bit at the moment.
Yeah.
What would you say on that front within the tech side of things?
I would just say that at least be aware of the opportunities that are available in the local tech companies here before, and don't just write them off, because there's really a luxury here that really did not exist when I was here 13 years ago and when I was deciding at that time. And there are really some amazing companies and talent. And I think more importantly, there are companies who can now absorb the really ambitious Kiwis who previously had to go overseas to satisfy that ambition. And increasingly, there are a number of them, and they are hungry for it. And there are other companies who also aspirationally want to be there and want to grow into those kind of companies. And so I think it would be a shame for folks to just leave the country without even knowing the other options. And the options may very well be that it still makes sense for folks to go overseas and work there and study there for whatever period of time. And that's still a great option. But the fact that we have a viable option in New Zealand now, and I think that the tech sector is the best it's ever been and the worst it'll ever be, is an amazing thing to say. And I think that folks should seriously take a look at it and consider it. And even if you do leave, to stay in touch with the tech sector here, because I think that whatever experience that is brought back will be really valuable for those companies too.
Yeah, I think there's still that opportunity to, I guess, in some way replicate what you were doing and bring more of our best and brightest expats back to New Zealand, right?
100%.
Yeah.
So I think it's not. I don't think it's a goodbye for folks who do leave, because I think tech does open up opportunities for both folks who comes back as well as folks who are just starting out their careers too. Both are viable now, whereas before I think it would have been a much harder sell. Yeah.
All right, well, we're out of time, so thank you very much, Bowen Pam, for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, appreciate it. Look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
All right, cheers. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Bowen Pan, and of course a big thank you to our NZ Tech Podcast show partners, Workday, 1NZ, Spark, 2 Degrees and Gorilla Technology. As usual, this episode was recorded at the Podcast NZ studios in Auckland, where smart Kiwi business leaders lighten their stress and get help recording and producing high-quality audio, video and webinars to take their products and services to new customers locally and globally every day. Be sure to follow NZ Tech Podcast across your favourite platforms such as YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and LinkedIn. I'm your host, Paul Spain, signing out. I'll be back again with a new episode for you next week. See you then.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.